Good evening. This is the Channel 1 news from the Television Information Agency. Today in the news. Today was the second day of the state visit by Russian President Yeltsin in France. The Russian parliament today changed the law on pensions. President Kravchuk says that the problems of Crimea and the Sevastopol area are being created artificially. Military units of Georgia's provisional government have entered Sukhumi. 2 terrorists in Havana are sentenced to death. Cholera threatens the capital of Argentina, Buenos Aires. Now these and other stories in more detail. The visit, which is bound to succeed, this is how the French press have christened President Yeltsin's official visit in France. Without jumping to conclusions, we will look at the events through the eyes of our special correspondent. In the protocol of the second day of the visit, there was only one event, the laying of the wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier under Paris's triumphal arch, at which mutual relations between France and Russia were not discussed. France and Russia have very many common themes to discuss, from the Tsarist debt, valued at $40 billion, which the French are counting on, to nuclear disarmament, which has become the #1 topic on all of Yeltsin's foreign trips. At a meeting with the French president, the Russian president said full mutual understanding was reached on military issues. Apparently, in Marshal Shapochnikov and Andrei Kozyrev's meetings with their French counterparts, the topic of military issues was worked out in detail. The French president assured the Russian president that France does not intend to increase its nuclear arsenals while Russia is decreasing its own nuclear might. This disarmament, however, was only the political background for economic issues, and whereas the local press calls Yeltsin a king in a tattered robe, this visit is not about direct aid. Yeltsin is inviting the West to beneficial cooperation and investing money in the Russian economy. The weak investment so far by Western investors will be stimulated by guarantees that Yeltsin proposes, and the security for Western investment will be Russia's material resources. In a package of documents signed by the government officials, the agreements should create the legal preconditions for bringing Russia's economy into integration with the European economy. After the meeting today, Yeltsin met with French business circles and Russian émigrés. More on that in our next report. Today, the Parliament, for the second time, considered amendments to the law on state pensions in the Russian Federation. And, of course, the interest in this issue by the elderly and people with disabilities is understandable. They are waiting to hear the results of this hearing. What can they hear for? What can they hope for? It has become clear today that World War II veterans will receive an additional 171 rubles in their monthly pension. The minimum old age pension will now be 342 rubles. The full pension law should come into effect on June 1st, 1992. And we should decide now the most important questions, how to work out and submit to the Supreme Soviet a plan for reevaluating former salaries, because many people who retired in the period of stagnation or before that received nominal salaries which were very low but higher than ours in real terms. Pensions are now fluctuating between 342 and 410 rubles 40 kopecks. I think that it has become practically very difficult to live on this amount. The minimum pension should increase automatically on the same scale as the minimum wage. The minimum wage, which will still be under the minimum consumer budget, will be less than 1,000. This is unrealistic. At the evening session of the Parliament of Russia, the desire to preserve the Black Sea Fleet as a single unit was expressed. The decree of the Parliament ordered the Russian government to preserve the Black Sea Fleet in accordance with the agreement on creating the Commonwealth of Independent States on December 8th, 1991. And in Ukraine today, the parliamentarians of that republic declared necessary and wise to decide the issue within the next month on delimiting the powers of the Crimean Autonomous Republic and the Ukrainian Republic. Their declaration expresses the need to decide this question only with the participation of the Crimean people. Today at the Ukrainian Parliament, Ukrainian Prime Minister Vitel Fokin said that in May, Ukraine will start issuing hryvnia monetary units. Today, 50% of the money in the Republic is coupons. The ruble portion of people's wealth will be transferred to their bank accounts. The former Central Committee of the Communist Party of this Republic is now the residence of the President of Ukraine. Today, Leonid Kravchuk held a press conference here. It began with questions, and the first question was, what, in the opinion of the President, is the shortest path to solving the problems of the Crimea and Sevastopol? There is no problem. It's being created artificially. In 1954, everything was decided in accordance with the laws and principles of that time. And if we reconsider them from the position of today's democracy, then you could even reconsider Roman law and call it undemocratic. We have to decide everything not from the point of view of political pressure, but at the negotiating table. Kravchuk said that Ukraine gives great hopes to the meeting on February 14th of all the CIS countries. The Commonwealth of Independent States has not exhausted its possibilities, the President emphasized. In 2 months, the leaders of the countries of the CIS have signed over 20 agreements. The main agreement is to observe all agreements between them and to act in accordance. The issue was also raised on inviting Russian Germans to live in the Ukraine. This is not an invitation, Kravchuk said. It's a restoration of justice. Before the war, in the southern part of the Ukraine, about 400,000 Germans lived, and they have the right, like other deported peoples, to return and to create a national self-governmental entity. Moldova will give Russia its share of the national wealth of the former USSR if Moscow pays Kishinyov's share of the foreign debt of the Soviet Union. This was the proposal of the Prime Minister of that republic in his report today. The Parliament is taking up this issue not because life is good here, but because liberalization of prices have put the population in a very difficult financial situation, and many layers of the population have been thrown below the poverty level. However, said Prime Minister Valery Moravsky, this is the only way out of the crisis, and the government will not abandon this course. Serious fears were expressed today by the lack of desire on the part of other Commonwealth leaders to participate in integrative processes, which could affect the conclusion of economic agreements between enterprises. But the most lively debates came in the discussion of the government's proposal to cover the domestic and foreign debt of the Republic. According to the plan, which would be which would take the form of an agreement between Moscow and Moldova. The essence of it is that Russia will take Moldova's share of the foreign debt and Moldova would give up its share of the assets. The question remains open. The Parliament will decide. In Nagorno-Karabakh, after a 2-day calm, which is not a very long time, military activities were renewed today along the border between Agdan and Askeransk regions. According to the ITR and TASS correspondent, shooting began today around Farukh, and the regional center of Askeran came under fire from various types of weapons. There is no casualty information yet. Artillery shelling of Khankendi began today, and the city is still under fire. Last night, military units of Georgia's provisional government entered Sukhumi, the press center of the Supreme Soviet of Abkhazia, reports. In order to take measures against people who are destabilizing the political and social situation, the Georgian Procurator's Office sent a team of investigators to Abkhazia today in order to help guarantee the security of road, rail, and air transport. Beginning at 6 a.m. today in the capital of Sukhumi, about 300 persons from the Georgian Provisional Government forces entered the city. The leaders of Abkhazia did not resist the Georgian National Guard, and the Georgian forces gave their strict guarantees that they would ensure the normal ensure that normal rail traffic is restored. Now the economic news. Industry in the Donbass is on the verge of paralysis. There is no fuel, and supplies have virtually stopped. Today, tens of thousands of workers could not get to work. Mines could stop working because there is no way to bring the workers to the mines from the villages they live scattered tens of kilometers around. 70% of the buses in the Donbass are idle. The supplies of gasoline and diesel fuel have stopped. The Lysychanski and other petroleum processing facilities in Ukraine are not working. People are alarmed by the unavoidable unemployment. The bus drivers, as a result of this, held a meeting today at which they gave demands to the government to